Greetings, Texas. My name is Ben Chang, and I'm the Research Director for the Texas Democratic Party. I'd like to welcome you to Looping You In, our weekly news roundup show where we cover all the real news here in the biggest battleground state in the country.
And hey guys, my name is Obi Rahman. I am the Communications Director for the Texas Democratic Party. There's a lot to talk about this week. Before we dive in, I'd like to thank our sponsors here. Texas Beer Company, a member of the Texas Craft Brewers Guild. It's a great beer. We've been enjoying it all morning. Just kidding. But this is an amazing beer, and we love it so much.
Cheers.
Yep. This week, we're starting off with our segment Real News, where we keep you updated on the news developments of the week. This week in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Jacob Blake was shot and paralyzed, unfortunately, in a very tragic situation by Kenosha police. It was a terrible thing that happened, and our hearts go out to the Blake family and the Kenosha community. The first thing we want to say is that Black Lives Matter. They've always mattered, they matter now, and they will continue to matter in the future. What we've seen is just an unbelievable amount of support for the Blake family, for the community, and for the two protesters that were unfortunately murdered at the hands of a Trump-induced white supremacist who brought a gun to a rally. And it's just a terrible thing what Donald Trump and the rest of these white supremacists and neo-Nazis have caused. What we're seeing here is just absolutely tragic, and it reinforces the point that this election is about so much more than just who our economy or providing healthcare. It's about life and death for so many different people, and we're going to keep on fighting. We're going to keep on fighting for Jacob. We're going to keep on fighting for our communities and to make sure that Black lives get the recognition and the respect that they deserve more than anybody else.
This week, Hurricane Laura, a Category 4 storm, hit southeast Texas and our neighbors in Louisiana. The Texas Democratic Party has put together a list of resources to aid and assist those recovering from the devastation. You can find a link to those resources in the caption. Our hearts and our thoughts go to everyone affected by the devastation of the hurricane.
You know, as is often the case in Trump's America, there is so much issues with Donald Trump's response to hurricanes. You know, I'm old enough to remember a year ago when Donald Trump said Texans profited off of Hurricane Harvey and that Texas made a fortune off of Harvey, which is absolutely bonkers.
President Trump is essentially raiding FEMA funds right now to do other things. So we could have had much more spending federally on hurricane preparedness and hurricane relief and support. But unfortunately, our leadership at the national level has just mismanaged disaster management, just like they've mismanaged so much more.
Only in Trump's America is it acceptable to raid over $100 billion in FEMA funds to build a stupid wall that nobody wants.
$100 billion, that sounds like a lot.
It's more than I have. So now it's time for our next segment, Fact Not Fiction, where we give you a rundown of all the misinformation spread at the most recent Donald Trump rally, the Republican National Convention.
I'd like to say just one word about the Republican National Convention. I mean, if you could describe it in one word, what would you say?
Just an alternate reality.
That's two words, but great.
So we saw the Democratic Convention last week. It was a big tent convention. We had multiple ideas. We had even Republicans who know that we have to come together to defeat Donald Trump and end Trumpism once and for all. Ben, how is that compared to the Republican Convention?
I'd say it's a very, very little tent. You know, one of the smallest tents I've seen in my lifetime. From my perspective, the Republican Party has been reduced essentially to the party of Trump. And we've seen that in their policy platform, which is basically, read it, it's do whatever Trump wants. And if you, like me, had to suffer through all 4 days of this abysmal convention, Trumpism is a plague and a scourge in our society. And in November, we will end it by winning Texas, the biggest battleground state in the country.
We're going to turn Texas blue. So now I think it's time for a fiction. Ben, do you have something to say about that?
I do. President Trump claimed that he has done more for the African-American community than any president since Abraham Lincoln.
Well, here's the facts. Texas Democrat, one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, Lyndon Baines Johnson, passed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. It's really funny to me that Republicans are saying that, you know, they're the party that ended slavery. They're the party that has fought for the betterment of black people, when the fact of the matter is that they were the ones who opposed the Civil Rights Act They're the ones who, after 1970, have done everything they can to race bait, to make things harder for African American communities, and to keep on just stopping advancement for people who need it the most. That includes education, that includes economic, that includes healthcare. It's been absolutely crazy. Another fiction that we have here is that Trump claimed Republicans will always strongly support protections for pre-existing conditions.
That is an absolute lie. That is laughable. President Trump is a strong supporter of our friend, my personal friend, indicted Ken Paxton, our Texas Attorney General, his lawsuit to eliminate the Affordable Care Act without a replacement. And guess what, guys? That would eliminate protections for pre-existing conditions.
And Ben, how many Texans have pre-existing conditions?
A whole lot.
10.7 million. It's absolutely crazy. It's a staggering number. Texas already ranks dead last in healthcare coverage, and now we want to take away even more healthcare. That's the Donald Trump's America. That's what we're looking at here if Donald Trump is able to somehow squeeze into a re-election.
Which he won't.
He won't.
Not with our help.
Yep. We're going to round out today's roundup with a Battleground Bulletin where we celebrate all of our Texas Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. We have some big news, some huge news. Ben, do you want to say what that big news is?
Obi, I'm so excited to announce that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has expanded its target list here in Texas. So that list now includes 3 very winnable races. Van Taylor's district, Roger Williams' district, and Ron Wright's district. Roger Williams loves to call the D-Trip the Democratic Cancel Culture Committee. So shout out to Representatives Taylor, Williams, and Wright. You are canceled in November.
Yep.
And we have 3 awesome, incredible candidates, Lulu Cycli, Julie Oliver, and Stephen Daniel. So watch out.
Okay, and then we also have a great Railroad Commission candidate, and there was some news on the Railroad Commission front, wasn't there? Krista Castaneda is our amazing Railroad Commission candidate. She's somebody who's going to fight for clean energy. She's somebody who's going to fight to make sure that Texas remains the #1 producer of oil and gas in the 21st century, and she's going to fight for a better future for all Texans. Her opponent, though, a guy by the name of Jim Wright, there was some news on that this week. Jim Wright, his environmental violations and his...
I believe 255 of them.
255.
That sounds like a lot to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, he has 255 violations from the Railroad Commission.
That seems unusual.
And he wants to run to be the next Railroad Commissioner. He is the epitome of everything wrong with a typical Trump Republican politician.
He is the Donald Trump of toxic waste management.
He really is.
Oh, but one thing I want to make sure everyone watching and listening remembers is that in order to turn Texas blue, we've got to make sure that every Texan is registered to vote, as many Texans as possible. That's why I'd love for everyone to know that next week, starting on this Monday, we'll be celebrating Texas Voter Registration Week by contacting 1 million Texans. I'd like to personally ask each and every one of you to please join us by signing up for a volunteer shift today.
Yeah, and one more thing to say about that. 1 million Texans in 1 week, that's historic. We need all of you. We need all hands on deck. This is our moment. This is when we're going to do this. We have 67 days until the election. It's time to go. To register, to sign up, to volunteer, go to the URL on this video. Well, guys, that's it. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Looping You In. There was a lot of news this week. A lot of it was very tragic, but guess what? We have 67 days to turn this country around. We're going to do it. We're going to win. Texas is going to go blue. Poll after poll shows that the energy is on our side. Let's do it. Let's change the country, because when we save Texas, we save the country and we save the world.